to the Business Intercept. I am Kiara Ashanti, and in this segment, we're going to talk about a story that you probably heard about, I guess about a month and a half ago. At least that's where I'm going to start off. It's an entertainment-related story, but entertainment is business. It's big business. In fact, billions of dollars are generated in revenue for all types of business entities. Movies, television, internet, you name it. And frankly, after a hard day's work, who doesn't like to come home and watch one of your favorite shows? However, with a lot of the civil unrest that has happened in the wake of the death of George Floyd and continuing with the defund police movement, a strange thing started to happen as a kind of ancillary, I don't even know what to call it. It seemed like anything dealing with the police now is suspect, is bad. So in the wake of when these riots started after George Floyd, a lot of companies, particularly in Hollywood, started taking action to try and either forestall any criticism of themselves or to show some sort of support for what was happening in the country. One of those, as you maybe remember, is right here where we're going to talk about is what entertainment giant A&E did with their show Live PD. If you're familiar with Live PD, it's like cops. Basically, it's a camera crew that follows police around and records their interactions throughout a particular day. It's a highly rated show on the A&E network, and after George Floyd, they pulled the show. And they pulled the show because activists, against the police and law enforcement, started calling into question how appropriate it would be for a lot of these shows to be on TV. Whether it happens to be a reality television-based show like Live PD was, or even many of other scripted shows. Because, look, I don't have to tell you this, you already know. Most scripted television shows on television dealing with law enforcement and police show the police as the heroes. They're out there trying to catch the crook, the criminals, they're good guys, they're brilliant CSI detectives. It's that old story about kids running around the house, cops and robbers. And the cops were the good guys, robbers were the bad guys. And activists are, frankly, questioning that whole idea. They don't believe that fiction, as they would call it, should be pushed on people and portrayed, because in actuality, police are the bad guys, not the robbers. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that is really not the point here. For me, the point is this right here. So when this was published back in July 24th on Fox, but it was reported throughout the country. A&E, after pulling Live PD, has lost half its viewers since dropping the popular program. Now, I want you to think about something. Imagine you own a paint shop, and you're the most popular paint shop in the city. And there's one type of paint that accounts for a large portion of your revenue. Okay? And then something happens. The paint company, the paint manufacturer gets caught up in, child labor laws in other countries or something. And you, as a business, decide you're not going to carry that paint any longer. And now half your customer base isn't buying anything from you because they wanted to buy that particular type of paint. It's a stretch of an analogy, but essentially that's what's happened here with A&E. Okay? Before A&E pulled the show, its primetime viewership was up 4% for the same time period in 2019. However, Ratings for the A&E network have plummeted since it canceled the hit TV reality show Live PD on June 10th. Average primetime viewership for A&E between June 11th and July 19th was 490,000 people, about 500,000 people, down 49% from the same period last year. So they're usually getting right about 1 million people in that demographic in that same time frame, and so they're going now. And the key demographics of adults 18 to 49 and 25 to 54, the declines are 55% and 53% respectively. The show, which follows police on their rounds in multiple cities, simultaneously averaged about 1.9 million viewers for its Friday and Saturday night episodes, which are often repeated. Okay. Now, this particular show has had many other spin-offs, and those shows have been cut as well. All right. So, when you lose ratings, that means less people are looking at your show. Less people looking at your show means less eyeballs for advertisers to have looking at their wares and goods. Less eyeballs mean you can't charge as much money for your ads space as you were before. So as a result, your revenues are going to drop. So let's kind of go all the way down here. Let's talk about the money, because money talks. The programs were very profitable to the network, due in part to the low production costs, which is true for all reality shows. That's why there are so many of them on television. They're really inexpensive to produce, and if you have one that people like to watch, the profit return, the ROI can be quite high. In 2019, the Live PD empire brought in $292 million in advertising, according to ad tracking firm Cantor Media. For the first quarter of 2020, the program sold $95 million in advertising. So, and this is the key, because what I'm talking about now is old news. I mean, we're in August, getting ready to, only a couple of weeks from September. This happened back in July. So this is old news, but this is a launching on point for what I really want to end up talking about. And this paragraph right here is key on this. In the entertainment industry, Mr. Floyd's death has led to discussions about the role of television and movies play in shaping perceptions of law enforcement, and whether portrayals of police have been too one-sided and have failed to address concerns about excessive force and bad policing. Now, basically, look, most television shows show police as the heroes, like I said earlier. Now the question is that appropriate? Shouldn't we show police not being the heroes? Shouldn't we showcase more examples of police malfeasance and double dealing and brutal force? Now, I'll be honest with you. I've always seen this on network TV. I mean, Chicago PD is very open about showing a police commander who is basically not towing the line. Okay, Denzel Washington got an Oscar for Training Day, in which he portrays a bastard of a cop and has a whole gang of cops that are not particularly good. So this idea that Hollywood doesn't showcase hardly any badness when it comes to police is false. I mean, they do. It's a regular trope, particularly the bad cop that's on the take. I mean, that's a trope older than I am. So, why does this matter? Okay, there's a certain concept that we've come into play in the last couple of years, which is get woke, go broke. The idea being that as a company or business enters the woke space, virtue signaling on certain things like transgender, race, now police, they act in certain ways, do certain things to appease the people who see life that way. and then ends up paying a price from their primary customers who think all of that is nonsense. So that brings me to this story right here. I'm just going to move this down a little bit so you can see, and then move this back up. Okay. CBS TV Studios Dramas have partnered with a public safety advisory group who will help police TV crime and legal dramas in the wake of the civil unrest that erupted this summer after George Floyd's death at the hands of law enforcement. The story says CBS Studios, for one, has signed an agreement with 21CP Solutions, a law enforcement and public safety advisory group, to consult with the writing teams on Blue Buds and NCIS and more of their police crime and legal series. The 21CP advisors will be comprised of former senior law enforcement officials, civil rights scholars, lawyers, academics, and community thought leaders in police reform and public safety. So let me translate that opening of the story for you. CBS has essentially gone into business with the woke squad. That's all this is. This is a woke squad that's going to come in and begin to help shape the storylines and characters in such a way as to portray police as less heroic. There are now going to be more storylines about bad police in these shows and dealing with bad police in these shows than were already present as a result of what's happening in the aftermath of George Floyd. Now, if you are a person who sits down at TV, in front of your television, and all you want to do is escape, you don't want to think about work, you don't want to think about politics, you don't want to have anybody preaching to you, you just want to see an interesting storyline. You're watching cops, you want to see them use some crazy science or some crazy detective work to catch the bad person who's trying to get away with murder or theft or whatever it happens to be in that particular episode. Well, going forward, it looks like you're not going to be able to do that. What's going to happen is now you're going to have to sit down and watch whole units, possibly, of police on TV being portrayed as the angry person. You're going to have to see Blue Buds deal with a storyline in which cops beat up an innocent black man completely over and over and over again. In a way, this kind of reminds me of what happened in the aftermath of some controversy with the show Grey's Anatomy. If you're never watched it, you must have been under a rock for the last 10, 12 years. But the first couple of seasons of Grey's Anatomy was really their best seasons. And during that season period, you had strong women, strong men, crazy relationships, funny, situations within the episodes, but you didn't have a lot of politics, and you didn't have any gay characters at all. Then some controversy came out with Isaiah Washington, who made some homophobic slurs and some comments that certainly the homosexual community took as homophobic, and it just blew up in Grey's Anatomy's face. And to kind of calm things down, they they basically fired Isaiah Washington. And that following year, nearly every single episode had something in it about homosexuality. Some guest star was dealing with some sort of gay storyline. Then they took a character who was the most feminine, loved men character and turned her gay. Which, put aside the whole issue of homosexuality, just from a writing point of view, didn't make any sense because she was not gay. She was not. The point I'm making, though, is as a way to appease those in Hollywood that were making a lot of noise, both in outwardly in the news and behind closed doors, Shonda Rhimes made homosexuality and gay storylines and gay characters a hallmark of the series. There's a demarcation line between what the series was before and after everything that happened with Isaiah Washington. Now, whether you think that is good or bad is really not the issue that I'm getting into. That's neither here nor there. What I'm saying is that situation is what's happening here, but with police. Okay, so what's the business tie-in? Because this is basically a social story. Well, the business tie-in is this: get woke, go broke. If people who like police, if people who don't want to be preached at because they just want to veg out in front of the television, are going to tune in and be preached at yet again about something else from the leftward side of the country, they're just not going to watch. I mean, they just won't. They'll switch off of CBS, and go someplace else. Now, this story is about CBS, but as they mentioned, they're just the first ones. There are certainly other production companies and other networks that are doing the same thing. And the people that they're bringing in, they're not people who like police. These are all left-wing, type people who don't like actual authority from a legal point of view. I mean, they don't mind imposing authoritarianism on you, me, and everybody else, but they certainly don't like police, FBI, military. They don't like any of that. Okay, so we're going to see a huge impact on not just these shows, but potentially on just about every single police show on television that we see. ABC, Fox. I mean, think about this. 24, one of the greatest series of all time, could not get made right now. I mean, it could not at all. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, a lot of the cable shows on TNT or USA, a lot of those places could, were places that people would leave the regular networks to, kind of a refuge to go see some other things. But as we've seen with other things, homosexuality, transgender, and everything else, those storylines have infected a certain degree of wokeness in those networks as well. And so what we could see is this infecting those networks in a huge way, which leaves you and me and many people who don't want to see this, where are we going to go? I think that will probably happen is somebody at some point is going to figure out that they need these viewers, and that most people don't dislike the police, that most people don't think most police are bad, and they're going to, whichever company does that, they're going to get those viewers. Now, A&E is already talking, not surprisingly, about a relaunch of Live PD. Why? Because they just can't take that ratings hit. I mean, they're a large company, a large entertainment company. So the revenue that Live PD brings in is not their only source of revenue, obviously. But when you think about the fact that there's not much outside entertainment that people can do in the country right now. Movie theaters are beginning to open up this week, but pretty much a lot of them are still closed. Cities like New York and LA, they're not going to let them open. You can't go to bars. You can't go to concerts in the way that we think of them. So there's not a lot to do except go to work if you're working, come home, and watch television. This is a time where, frankly, television ratings for certain things should be going through the roof, like sports, like, dramas, but ratings are down. And of course, ratings are hugely down in sports with the NBA because of their kneeling. So what CBS is doing right now is likely making the first step in a huge mistake that's going to cost them money. Not only in terms of the amount of money that they're spending to hire this company, right? Because this company's not doing this for free, right? But also the revenue, as there ends up being a backlash against narratives that come across as heavy-handed, for one, and that most people don't believe when it comes to police, for two. That's going to do it for this particular story. We'll see what happens, and we'll, in about come around September. I mean, it's going to be a little bit odd because, frankly, a lot of these companies have not been in production for this long time, and so the only thing they're going to be able to put out in the fall might be things that they already had in the can, but more likely we're going to see a much delayed starting time for any series. So what we see as the products of this type of wokeness, so to speak, might be a year or two down the line. So we'll keep you updated. This has been Business Intercept. Like I said, please, if you have any comments, questions, put them down below. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so when new videos come out, you are let know.